So, last week we began this journey of opening to and formulating a vision for a new world, a peaceful, kind, loving world that works for everyone. Remember, we did that, yeah? We did a brief visioning process here together on Sunday. And then I encouraged you to maybe take that home and do a little more of that visioning to sort of clarify that vision. Did anybody get a chance to work on that this week? Wonderful, wonderful. And would anybody like to share their part of the vision that they're beginning to get? I think it's important to begin to verbalize this in our community. We're doing this as a community. Anybody like to share their part of the vision? Vi?
Well, it really has to do with our mission statement, that it's opening our hearts to everybody, and discussing things and allowing other people's opinions. We don't have to agree with them, but we can listen and discuss and grow in the light of love.
Beautiful. That's it. That's it. Very, very good. Anybody else have anything? And everybody, it's kind of sort of all cells that sort of work together to create the body. You know, everybody has a different part of that picture, of that vision. And it's all necessary. We need to put all these pieces of the puzzle together. Another part of what we're doing is creating a community vision board. I don't see that anybody has brought in any images yet, but so I'll encourage you again to bring in images that represent this vision, this emerging vision of a peaceful, joyous, loving world that works for everyone. Images that you might find in a magazine or in a Google search. Print them out and bring them in, and then, just feel out where exactly they belong on that that board. It is a work in progress, and it will continue to take shape over the next few weeks, but we need your participation in order for that to happen. Okay, great. And so, as I mentioned last week, an important part of the visioning process that Reverend Michael Beckwith, who really developed this whole visioning, he perfected this whole visioning process, a very important part of it is to ask that question, what do I need to release in order for this vision to manifest? And he says a lot of people miss this step, as you might imagine, but it's important. It's essential, really, when you think about it, because you are opening to this vision, you are embracing it, it's becoming part of your energy field, you're vibrating with it, that creative energy that always moves through us and outpictures our consciousness in our experience is now moving through us, through this vision and out into our experience, but sometimes it hits a roadblock. And that roadblock, those roadblocks are those places in us where we have yet to release. Those unhealed places in us, place in us maybe that we are not in alignment with our divine truth. The book that we are using as a guide for this series, A Force for Love, in that book, the Dalai Lama talks about becoming aware of what he calls the enemies of our well-being. The enemies of our well-being, which are sort of destructive emotions and intentions, and our job is to clean them out. Do a little, as what he calls emotional hygiene. Emotional hygiene. And he recommends the way that we do this is to become aware when these emotions first come up and to face them head on. These kind of destructive emotions like anger and fear and judgment that could really wreak havoc with our peace of mind. And eventually harm us and potentially harm someone else. So become aware of them when they first come up and face them head on. And, that makes sense because when you are once you've developed this radar to detect these destructive energies, then you're at choice. Then you have a choice. I can either choose to continue to be influenced by them, or I can make a choice, do something else. I can shift my energy. I can choose to shift my energy in a different direction. Now, sometimes that comes under that category of easier said than done. So, what I find as an effective way to do this, yes, become aware, and yes, another effective way to do this is to really investigate the perceptions that are giving rise to these strong reactions within us. To really kind of see, what is it? Is there something behind my suddenly reacting strongly and negatively to something or someone? Is there maybe a belief in me that is causing this, to someone or a group of people or about myself? So, for example, if I believe deep down, and these beliefs are, deep down, not necessarily conscious. If I believe deep down that I'm not good enough, then whenever someone criticizes me for the littlest thing, I get defensive and angry. And I don't think kindly of that person. That's and none of this, I'm not really aware of it because it's below the level of my consciousness. All I know is that I'm feeling angry. So beliefs feed our emotions. Beliefs feed our emotions, but because they are mostly subconscious, we need to do a little work to investigate. Little investigation work. And I know some of you have done some of this work, or are doing it now. Some people work with a psychotherapist or a hypnotist, and all of that can be very helpful. But what can we do on our own? If we don't have access at the moment, what can we do to kind of get that going? Well, I found for myself pretty effective technique. It's pretty effective for other people who do this as well. Is to first sit in the silence. To sit in the silence. All we need to know about ourselves and healing ourselves is within us. It's all there in our inner wisdom. And when we get quiet enough, we make space for it, we open to it, we listen, we can hear it. So the idea is to get still enough and consciously connect with that inner wisdom. And then once you are connected with that source energy, ask your inner wisdom. What core beliefs are behind this energy, this negative energy, or this sudden reaction, strong reaction to something? Or what is causing me to behave in ways that are counterproductive? Or what is thwarting the manifestation of my good? These are all questions that you can ask depending on what you're looking for. And then once you make sure you have a pen and a piece of paper or journal next to you, and once you start getting a sense of it, begin to write it down. Just let that wisdom flow from spirit through your arm, through your hand, and onto the paper. Let it flow. And then once it becomes clear, the second part of this is to go back into that silence, into that meditative place. And then ask that inner Christ, the inner I am within us, to radiate its healing light throughout our consciousness and our subconsciousness, dissolving all of those false beliefs, all that stuck energy with its healing light. Dissolving it all with its healing light. You know, we just need to ask. Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and the door shall be open. It's all there within us, and we just want to open, connect, and ask. And so this is an exercise that we do together in the Conscious Co-Creating class, and it's very powerful. But you can do it on your own, and in fact, as an early Christmas present, I've written down these steps. It's in a handout in your program, so you can take that home with you and do this on your own. And why? Why is it important to do this? Because unhealed people do not bring forth a healed world. Plain and simple. We need to do the healing within us first. We need to be the peaceful, loving, fearless people that we were really created to be in order to co-create a beautiful, loving, peaceful, and compassionate world. So that's why it's important to do this, emotional hygiene that the Dalai Lama talks about. And so in the book, they relate this story that I'd like to share with you about how these self-reflective and meditative techniques can really be so effective in places that you'd never expect. So the Dalai Lama developed a program with psychologists and meditation teachers called Cultivating Emotional Balance, or CEB for short. And it really integrates the traditional Tibetan contemplative practices with modern psychology, in particular this idea of mapping your emotions. And an associate of the Dalai Lama took this program into the Soledad State Prison. It's a high-security prison in California, to work with a group of inmates there. And one story in particular that this woman, Eve Ekman is her name, social worker, medical social worker, the one story that she relates is she worked with this inmate named Ron, who was up for parole after serving 40 years. And he described what he was feeling at that time that he found out. He was excited, joyful, elated, grateful, and those feelings were, they kind of spread to the other inmates. They were, everyone was sort of uplifted by this. And 2 weeks later, he found out that his parole had been denied. And he just collapsed into sadness, helplessness, feeling just so angry about it all. He withdrew from his fellow inmates, didn't want any connection there, became agitated. So when this social worker began to work with him and the group of inmates, she had him map his emotions along a timeline. In other words, what did you feel in the initial, when you first heard about the parole, and then what did you feel later on? And then later on, a couple days later, what did you feel? And then when you found out about that it had been canceled, how did you initially react? Then what did you feel later on? And then later on that evening, what did you feel? And then the next day, what did you feel? And so by doing this, he was able to step back from his feelings, these overwhelming feelings, for the first time in his life. He was suddenly no longer swallowed up by them. It was a revelation. And apparently, a common story of prisoners is that, they report that they grew up not feeling loved, never getting that love, not feeling cared for enough. And so they become angry, overwhelmingly angry, because we teach boys that it's inappropriate, it's a sign of weakness if they express sadness, right? So what's the next emotion over? It's the anger. And then those angry boys grow up to be men who often self-medicate with drugs or lash out to others, and, then the whole cycle happens, crime and then prison. Right? So this social worker began to work with them, had them map out their emotions along this timeline. And they were able, all of them, like suddenly they're not swallowed up by these things. Suddenly they realize, whoa, I can step back from this and I can be a choice here. And then she reported that they were opening up. They were willing to open up to her about these emotions and the hurt that they experienced when they were young that kind of led to this whole thing. And then it gets better. And then she leads them in this meditation, that she teaches them these meditation techniques and these breathing techniques so that they can calm down and be in the present moment. Be present, because, there's a lot of worrying about, fretting about the future and dwelling on the regrets of the past. And she says to them about that, you can't change what has happened, but you can use every moment to set a new motivation, a new aspiration. And then she leads them through this guided meditation process that sounds a little bit like the visioning process we did last week. She asked these questions. What would it be like for me to attain genuine happiness? What would I need from the world to achieve this? What would I need from myself? What habits would I need to learn? Sounds a little bit like, what do I need to address? What do I need to release, right? And finally, how could I bring this to the world and be of service? And then it gets even better. So they're sitting in the circle as she ends the session with them silently wishing each other well in their lives and wishing themselves well. That the metta meditation, may you be happy, may you be at peace. Yeah, that's what they did. Can you imagine the change that could be made if this were brought into prisons? And Reverend Rosemary and I were investigating, we're having trouble finding any other times that this happened. It could have been like a one-off. So imagine if this program were brought into these prisons. What a change it would make. And imagine what it would be like to bring this program to at-risk kids in school before these destructive emotions led to the whole thing in the first place. Wow. Maybe that's something that we can add to our vision of a peaceful, loving world that works for everyone. And maybe there are images that represent that to you that you can find and add to our community vision board there. So many ways that we can make a change by bringing what we know. What we know, the self-reflective, meditative, breathing, connecting with spirit, opening to our oneness with each other. These things can make such a difference in people's lives. So, over the course of the next few weeks and into next year, we're going to be thinking about ways that we can begin to bring this into the world together as a community to help make a difference. We'll be talking about it and making decisions together about what we'll do. In the meantime, the emotional hygiene. You've got the steps. You've got something to work on this week to acknowledge, pay attention to, and begin to release those enemies to our well-being. With that simple exercise. And look for images to bring in, continue the visioning process with us, opening to that divine vision that we can connect with and bring to the world. All right. Namaste.